If you're looking to master tumbler engraving with the xTool RA2, you are in the right place. In this video, I'll walk you through the entire process from material prep, rotary alignment, to image setup in XCS, and executing both single logo and wraparound engravings. You'll learn how to avoid the mistakes I made early on so you don't waste time, tumblers, or patience. Some of these engravings can take up to 1 hour, depending on the image and style, so getting it right the first time actually matters. And if you're thinking long-term, this isn't just a fun project. It is a skill that you can turn into a solid side hustle or a small business. People love custom tumblers, and as you probably know already, there's always a strong demand for personalized gifts and branded merch. Let's get started. All right, let's talk tumblers. I picked this up from Amazon. They are pretty big, 40-ounce, double-wall stainless steels, powder-coated and RA2 ready. Powder-coated stainless steel tumblers are by far the most popular and the easiest ones to engrave. You get clean, high-contrast results without needing marking sprays or chemicals. And on the plus side, the chances of burning something in the process are very low. You can find this pretty much anywhere. xTool sells them too, and honestly, theirs are a bit nicer. They usually come with a metal straw and a brush for cleaning. I'm using the 40-ounce size, but 30 ounces and 20 ounces are also very popular. If you're planning to make several or start selling, consider buying in bulk. You'll get better pricing, and trust me, it's good to have a few extras on hand. You'll need to sacrifice at least one for material testing. If taper tumblers are a bit too intimidating to start your engraving journey, there are other styles that are just as attractive when engraved. Most quality tumblers are made from 304 stainless steel that's food grade, rust resistant, and built to last. Same stuff as your kitchen sink or cookware. Look for a 304 marking on the bottom of your tumbler. Hopefully you'll find it. Hopefully. If you want to go deeper on stainless steel engraving, I've got another video where I cover that in more detail. Check that out after this one, of course. First step, unbox and inspect. Make sure the surface is smooth, no dents or weird defects. For this project, we'll need to remove the handle. Most of these have a removable handle. Just locate the screws and take them off. Some people might leave the handle on for a single logo engraving, but I don't like taking chances. I remove it either way. For the wraparound engraving, you'll definitely need to take the handle off. Once it's removed, you'll see two prongs sticking straight up. You'll want to gently bend them in or out to avoid hitting the laser module. Whatever is easier for you. Some folks run their S1 without bending the prongs. I mean, you could go rogue and live dangerously, but I prefer to play it safe. The S1 can technically engrave over the folded prongs, but it's still best to check your own setup and be cautious. We'll test it again when we get to the laser for sure. Now it's a good time to grab measurements. You'll need the perimeter and height of your tumbler. For the single logo engraving, I just measure the top portion. I think it looks best when centered in the upper section. Sometimes I mark the center of the cup, but often I just align everything later in XCS when I'm at the laser. For the wraparound, measure from the lip of the tumbler down to the bottom. Specifically from the end of that edge down to that little line at the base. That's usually where I stop. Finally, it's a good idea to wipe the surface with isopropyl alcohol. Oils from the handling or the manufacturing can affect the engraving quality. You will be handling the tumbler a lot during the setup, so you can wait and clean it once it is on the rotary. Honestly, I usually wipe it down a couple of times throughout the whole process. OCD much? We're using the RA2 Pro in chuck mode today. Perfect for items like tumblers that have a strong taper. Roller mode is better for straight symmetrical objects like mugs or dowels or even pencils. The RA2 Pro actually comes out of the box in roller mode. Installing the chuck component can feel intimidating at first, but like most things, do it a couple of times and it just gets easier. If you haven't seen it yet, check out my unboxing video where I go over this in more detail. The tumblers I'm working with today are all the same size, so everything I show here will apply to both the single logo engraving and the full wrap. The main differences will be the size of the design, the placement, and how we level the RA2 and focus the laser. But first, let's set up our test tumbler. This loyal guy is the same size as the others. I'm using it to dial in the settings for the wraparound engraving. For this tumbler, I'm using the single steps. The double one might be a little too small to fit. It all depends on the size of your tumbler or mug, whatever you're using. Just a heads up, if you install them on the outside, your laser module might hit them. For most setups, the inside configuration is safer and helps avoid hitting the prongs. Ask me how I know. Tighten everything by hand first, and just to mess with the old saying, it's lefty-tighty, righty-loosey, because this is the RA2 world now. Don't crack things down too hard just yet. Start by adjusting by hand and make sure your tumbler is horizontal, not slanted. Tip: every now and then, check the small screws that hold the chuck to the RA2 frame. They can loosen up over time, and that will mess with your leveling. For the full wrap, we will need to do a bit more of a calculation and setup. That setup will require us to tilt the RA2 to match that angle. I'll use wedges for this, but if you want something easier and your wallet agrees, xTool offers a deluxe kit that includes a tilting chuck mechanism and alignment laser. It can tilt up to 26 degrees, so it's very helpful for this process. Or check out Etsy. There are tons of jigs that people have made that can actually help. You can even make your own, which is what I did. I designed a custom backplate and leveling guide, and I'll be sharing the file with my Patreon supporters. Check that out if you're interested. And speaking of that, if you would like to support the channel beyond the much appreciated likes and subs, I also have Patreon and YouTube memberships. It is a great way to help me continue to grow the channel, upgrade my gear, and keep making better quality videos for you. I share behind the scenes content, weekly updates, the occasional rant, and I upload the files for my jigs and guides to help keep everything organized. Someone recently asked if I would post my video notes and scripts, and yes, I can totally start doing that if it's helpful. Just let me know in the comments. Now, another thing to watch for is the tumbler size in relation to your RA2's placement. I usually grab the laser module and move it side to side manually to test the clearance. Once everything looks good, go ahead and tighten the jaws down completely. Don't overdo it. The RA2 can easily scratch, and the chuck has some plastic components. Too much force and you could damage something. You can do all of this setup on a workbench or table and then move it into your machine. Personally, I just set it up directly inside the enclosure. It saves time. Tip: don't forget to secure the cable that connects the RA2 to the base of your laser. I've had it almost get snagged when the module moved to one side. Just a quick heads up to save you the panic. All I did was just secure it with some tape and remove it whenever I need to remove the RA2 out of the laser. I already did my material testing using my sacrificial tumbler in the previous video. For the single logo engraving, I feel confident using the same settings. I'm trusting my numbers. If you're using the same machine as me, feel free to use my settings as a reference point. You can also check what xTool recommends and adjust from there. That's exactly how I started. For this power-coded tumblers, xTool recommends 40% power, 200 speed, and 160 lines per centimeter. Now, for the full wrap, I'll need to run some new tests. Because we're tilting the RA2 and working with a tapered surface, we'll have to fine-tune the focal distance. The challenge is this: if I focus the laser at the highest point of the tumbler, the beam might not hit strong enough at the bottom, where the surface is further away. I could crank up the power and slow down the speed to compensate for that drop, but then I risk burning the top. So what do you do? I've seen three main ways to approach this, and they all aim to find an average working height. Remember, you will need to tilt your RA2 for all this. Hello, your favorite editor here. For the S1, the optional riser base will make the tilting and leveling process a lot easier. If you don't have a riser base, don't remove the bottom tray. The laser won't fire. Ask me how I know. The engraving of larger tumblers is doable without the riser bed, but you will use a lot of approximations, additional leveling, and a ton of guesstimation. If you're planning on engraving larger tumblers with a certain amount of frequency, do yourself a favor and buy the riser base and the RA2 Deluxe package. Let's continue with the video. Option 1. Focus from the prongs. With the xTool S1, I just position the focus needle so it touches one of the folded prongs. The laser module doesn't hit them, and it gives me a quick average height reference. Option 2. This one is a bit more mathy. Measure the distance from the laser module to the top of the tumbler and then again to the bottom. Find the average and use that for your focal distance. Option 3. Tilt the RA2 until the distance from the laser to both the top and the bottom of the tumbler is the same. For this method, you'll need a level, and that little support stand that I made will come in handy. I will also make it available to my patrons if you're interested. Of course, you can totally eyeball it. Just expect some trial and error. If you have a digital inclinometer, this is a great time to use it. Record that angle so you can reuse it in future setups. With our numbers ready, let's head to the computer. First, we need to get our images, then we'll work in XCS, xTool Creative Space. I use Creative Fabrica for all my laser engraving images. It's way safer than pulling random files from Google. The images are licensed, and the yearly plan is much cheaper than buying individual files on Etsy. Honestly, it's a no-brainer for me. I've already downloaded a couple of images. My wife even picked one of her favorites for today's demo. Before importing anything, make sure you know the size of the tumbler you're working with. You can stretch images to fit your engraving area, but be careful not to distort them too much. Some light tweaking is fine, but keep the proportions in check. For today's engravings, we'll do a single logo on the black tumbler and a floral wrap for the pretty one. Both files are linked below. All right. Open up XCS. The first thing I do is switch the working mode to Chuck Rotary, not the default base plate. You'll find that in the top menu. Next, using our measurements, we draw a reference box. This gives us a visual workspace. Think of it like applying a label to your tumbler, mug, or glass. Let's start with the single logo. Bring your image into XCS, either by dragging it or using the import option. Now, if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, importing or dragging images, I've made a video before that introduces you to some of these concepts and the first steps as you start working in XCS. Check it out. Place the image inside your reference box. I like to keep it centered in the top section of the tumbler. Resize it to fit the real estate you want. Rotate the image to match the tumbler's orientation. For me, the mouth of the tumbler is to the right, so I rotate my design 90 degrees to the right. You can do that by clicking and dragging the rotation circle or just enter 90 in the rotation box. If the mouth were to the left, you would rotate minus 90 degrees instead. Now, let's do the same for the wraparound engraving, because honestly, many of the same principles apply. I like to work on a separate canvas for each version. It keeps things organized. You could start a new project, but for sanity's sake, I prefer one workspace. Create a new reference box using the full height and perimeter of the tumbler. Bring in the wrap image. In my case, the design is already made for a 40-ounce tumbler, so no need to resize anything. If your design is too large or too small, that's okay. You can adjust it manually to fit your engraving area. Just make sure you preserve proportions to avoid distortion. Tip: if you're not comfortable engraving too close to the prongs, subtract 1 centimeter from the perimeter measurement. Later at the machine, you can manually rotate the tumbler and frame it until everything looks just right. I'll show you that setup soon. Now, rotate your image and reference box just like we did earlier. Again, the mouth of the tumbler is to the right, so I'll rotate the image 90 degrees to match. Then it's time to plug in our engraving settings. You can use the defaults from the xTool material library or go with the settings you got from your own testing. Either way, the name of the game is test, test, test. So just to recap, for a single logo, measure the top of your tumbler. Create a reference box, center your design, and rotate. For a wraparound, measure the full height and perimeter. Build your box, bring in your design, rotate 90 degrees, and align it to wrap edge to edge. All right, here's the fun part, the engraving. Let's head back to the garage and get started. I secure the tumbler and double check that it rotates smoothly. Then I hop into XCS to set up our measurements and framing. I plug in the numbers, making sure the focal distance is spot on. For the first engraving, I want the design right in the middle, so I double check that framing carefully. Quick tip, manually move your laser module and make sure it won't hit anything. If you adjust the hardware position, you might also need to adjust your settings again in XCS. I run the framing one last time. Everything looks good. Let's get this engraving started. Engraving can take a few minutes or close to 1 hour, sometimes even more. It all depends on your settings and the size of your image. Here is something to keep in mind. A slower speed usually gives you crispier results on powder-coated tumblers. While this tumbler runs, let me remind you, if you're enjoying this kind of content, hit that like button and consider subscribing. I also share tips and behind-the-scenes projects over on my page on Facebook. So come and hang out there too. Now, for the wraparound version. First, we'll set up the focal distance. I measure the top of the tumbler, then the bottom, and plug in those numbers. If you're unsure, take another measurement. That's what I do all the time. This is a good point to double check everything. Clean the surface again if needed, recheck your alignment, whatever helps you avoid mistakes. These tumblers aren't cheap, and it's no fun waiting 30 minutes to 1 hour only to realize something went wrong. When it comes to alignment, you want to start and end your wrap engraving right at the prongs. That gives you a nice, continuous look around the tumbler. And again, if you're not comfortable getting that close, you can always subtract about 1 centimeter from the total width to account for the prongs and place your design just outside them. All right, let's do our manual framing. Run the module back and forth to make sure everything's clear and nothing will get hit. Once you're happy with the setup, go ahead and run the actual framing. You can always tweak things here back and forth, left and right. If everything looks good, let's run that engraving. So if you're curious, my settings for the full wrap are 50 for power, 300 for speed, and 190 LPC. Based on my testing, 5 millimeters is the average height I'm using for my focal distance. Even after all my prep, I still hit the prongs on my first attempt, so you will see a small line on the tumbler. I will show you. Once the engraving is done, let the machine come to a complete stop and give the air extractor a moment to clear out any lingering fumes. Use a soft cloth or sponge to wipe away any residue. Most of the time, this comes off easily with warm water and soap or a bit of rubbing alcohol. Do this before you start judging your engraving too harshly. There have been times I pulled a tumbler out of the laser, looked at it, and thought it was ruined. Already mentally adding it to my test pile. But then I gave it a quick clean with alcohol, and boom, it looked way better. And hey, if a tumbler really doesn't turn out how you hoped, don't toss it. Keep it for future tests. They're super helpful when dialing in settings or experimenting with new designs. Once everything's clean, straighten any bent prongs, reattach any accessories, and give it one final wipe. And that's it. 2 custom tumblers, one with a clean logo and the other fully wrapped. Which one do you prefer? Are you ready to get started? Got any tips of your own? Drop them in the comments. I would love to hear what is working for you. If this video helped you, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. I've got plenty more beginner-friendly laser content on the way, from material testings to project walkthroughs and everything in between. Got questions? Curious about full wrap designs, engraving on glass, or something else entirely? Drop it in the comments. I read and respond to as many as I can. Thank you for hanging out with me today. As always, happy engraving. So long.